Hi everybody, this is Ryan Bailey, President and CEO of First Principle Group. Today what I wanted to talk to you about is the subject of addictions. And in particular, what I want to help you do is to see addictions in maybe a way that's different and that gives a different way of working with addictions that I've found extremely helpful over the 2 decades that I've been working in the addiction field. In particular, where I've really focused is pornography addiction and sexual addiction, but this applies across the board to so many other addictions, in fact to all of them. Many times we think once an addict, always an addict, but yet we see in scripture that that's not the case. So sometimes people identify themselves by their addiction, and if we look at 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11, it says some of you were adulterers, fornicators, homosexual offenders, etc., 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 right? So it gives this list of identification through some sort of sin habit. And we see that that's often similar to the way people describe themselves as an addict. Hi, I'm an alcoholic, or something along that line. And what I want us to do is I want us to look at addictions through maybe a different grid. And so where I got this grid from was from Tim Keller from Redeemer Presbyterian Church of New York City. And in a sermon, he said, in a sermon on addictions, he said addictions are good things that have become the thing in your life. So in other words, it's something typically good. Sex is good. Food is good. Feeling good is good. So if you try to feel good with a destructive drug like meth or alcohol or whatever, you're after that good feeling, which is good. It's good to feel good. Anger is good. Anything that can be an addiction, gambling, as a process addiction, it comes from a similar root where you want to feel excited and challenged and what have you. When we look at addictions at what they're giving you at a root level, what we see are lots of good things. However, when we elevate any of those things to an ultimate end where they're ahead of God, that's where they become destructive. And that's where we start seeing that it changes your biology. It actually changes the way the chemicals in your brain works. It changes so much about you that it has such a destructive impact. With porn addicts in particular, we can see in brain scans the damage that it does to brains. And there we have, porn, which isn't even a chemical, destroying your brain, which is a physical substance in your body, a physical element in your body. So one of the things that we want to look at is how can you tell what you're addicted to? Now, here's what I want to say. Because we have a sinful nature, I'm a believer that every single person on the planet is addicted to something. Because every single person on the planet elevates something in front of God. And it might switch from time to time, but typically we do. So sometimes people elevate their pride, or sometimes people elevate their kind of self-righteousness, their rightness, because they don't have certain sins going on in their life, or it's harder to notice their sins. Some people elevate their children to a point where it's above God. Some people elevate their career, food, sex, alcohol, drugs. You name it. We can elevate any of those things above God. And we've all got something, and I believe multiple things that we go to that's like that. So how can you tell what you're addicted to? Well, some of the questions that Tim Keller used to ask to help us understand what we're addicted to, I don't remember all of them, but some of them were, and I'll also give you some that I use with clients throughout the years that's been really helpful. One of the ones that he used is, what if threatened, do you notice you get inordinately bent out of shape over? So maybe something happens with your children, and it would be right for you to feel threatened by it. But what even to others around you seems like it's too much, too high, too strong. For some of us, that has to do with financial security. If we feel like our financial security is threatened, we have an inordinate response to it. And so all of a sudden, we see an extreme amount of anxiety, not just a little or a common form of anxiety. We see too much. Another question you can ask yourself on top of what if threatened, does it lead to an inordinate response? What do you envy? So what is it that you wish you had and you thought if you had that would really satisfy you? That's often a sign. Another one is, where does your mind drift to when you don't have to think about anything? And sometimes that could be something that you've elevated to that super high level. Another one that you want to pay attention to is, how do you spend your money? On what do you spend your money that seems kind of unusual? So when I used to be a financial consultant, short 2-year stint, and if clients brought in how they spent their money and I see how they spent it over time, it was wild picking out what it is that they extremely valued or what they believed would bring them worth. Often those are things that they're addicted to. Now, there's so many ways that we could see that elevating good things to the ultimate thing is not cool. What we want to also pay attention to is that it actually does wind up changing things in your biochemistry. And so next time, or in part 2 of this one, we'll talk about how it does change biochemistry, and then we'll work on how do we bring the gospel into this so that we can find that we're killing the idols and replacing them with more of what will give us what we're ultimately looking for. So if we go down deep into all of our addictions, we're really trying to get some sort of satisfaction from something that only God can do. And so next time we'll talk about how we get there, and we'll apply it even further.